So today we're going to dive into the world of ayahuasca tourism. But here's the twist. We're going to wind the clock all the way back to 1994. We're looking at this through the lens of a really fascinating anthropological study that caught the phenomenon right as it was taking off. And what it gives us is this raw, unfiltered, and pretty critical look at how a sacred ritual was getting repackaged for a brand new type of customer.
And check out the language that was used to sell it. This wasn't advertised as, a drug trip. Not at all. It was sold as a quest, a journey to find harmony, balance, and this shaman warrior hiding inside you. This promise, this incredibly romantic vision, that's the key to understanding the whole shebang. All right, so let's get right into it by looking at how exactly this experience was packaged and sold, specifically to a Western audience with money to spend.
I mean, when you look at the actual marketing materials, it's all right there. These were glossy, expensive brochures, and they weren't selling a substance, they were selling self-development. Notice the wording? It's all about a spirited journey, spiritual transformation, inner peace. It's also carefully crafted to appeal to someone who's searching for something deeper, something profound, all guided by the ancient wisdom of an 86-year-old shaman.
So, who exactly was buying this promise? And maybe more importantly, what were they really looking for, deep down in the Amazon jungle?
This is the central question the author, Dobkin de Rios, really wants to answer. And it's not just a simple case of thrill-seeking. The answer, she argues, actually goes much deeper, back to a psychological state that started to pop up after World War II.
She introduces this idea called the empty self. Now, what is that? It basically describes this modern-day feeling of a void, really. A void left behind as things like the extended family, community traditions, and just a shared sense of purpose started to fade away. It's a self that feels incomplete and is always trying to get filled up.
And this is how that emptiness starts to play out. According to the research, people try to fill that void by consuming things, food, products, and for our story, the most important one, experiences. So, an Amazonian drug ritual? Well, that becomes the perfect consumer product. It's this authentic, mystical experience that promises to fix your self-esteem and give you the meaning that modern life just can't seem to provide.
Okay, so now let's pull back the curtain on the healers, the guides who were leading these so-called spiritual journeys. Who were these supposed masters of ancient wisdom?
And this is where the gap between the brochure and reality just becomes massive. On one side, you have the tourist expectation, a timeless tribal native, a spiritual voyager just steeped in ancient knowledge. But what the author actually found on the ground? Often, they were middle-class urban guys, savvy entrepreneurs, sometimes former salesmen, who had no formal training or apprenticeship in traditional healing whatsoever.
And here's the thing, these men, they understood their market perfectly. They got that Western tourists were thirsty for something exotic, and they were more than happy to play the part. They figured out a fundamental rule of this whole new game. Authenticity sells, even if that authenticity has to be, completely manufactured.
Okay, so if the tourist is the audience and the healer is an actor just playing a role, what did the actual performance, the sacred ritual, really look like?
I mean, this anecdote from the study just says it all. It's incredible. During one session, a couple of Russian diplomats were getting violently ill from the ayahuasca brew. So the maestro, trying to personalize the experience, starts yelling at them. Go on, vomit up Stalin. Go on, vomit up Lenin. It's absurd, and it's also incredibly revealing about the cultural gap here. You see, the tourists were projecting this fantasy of the noble savage onto the people they met. They saw these timeless, primitive folks untouched by the modern world. The reality? As the author points out, they were often just regular city dwellers, carpenters, laborers, who, thanks to a nearby satellite, probably had better TV reception than the tourists did back home.
And it's really important to remember who our source is here. Dobkin de Rios wasn't just some casual observer. We're talking about a medical anthropologist who'd been studying traditional ayahuasca use in this exact region for decades, since 1967, long before any tourist boom. And that gives her final conclusion some serious weight.
And here is that conclusion. She does not mince words. She argues that the best way to understand this whole enterprise isn't as a spiritual exchange, but as theater, a stage drama where the so-called healers are, in her words, common drug dealers dressed for deception.
She even breaks down the whole production for us. You've got the stage manager, that's the shaman, using music and chants and smells to create the whole vibe. Then you have the lead actor, that's the tourist, who is highly suggestible and totally dependent on their guide. And the script? While unlike traditional rituals with shared cultural meaning,
This script is all about a personalized vision, a unique, authentic experience created just for the person paying the bills.
But here's the crucial part. Even though this might have been theater, the author argues it had some very real and honestly pretty damaging consequences.
The author is crystal clear that this was not some kind of mutual learning experience. In fact, she points to its evil, exploitive aspect. There were real psychological casualties, tourists who were left with serious depression and confusion. And on a cultural level, the rise of these for-profit shamans meant that authentic traditions were just disappearing because real healers couldn't find anyone willing to do the long, hard work of a real apprenticeship anymore.
The paper wraps things up by zooming out with this incredibly powerful quote from Laura Huxley. It's a reminder that any guide, whether they're spiritual or not, holds an immense amount of power over the people they lead. And that power dynamic, she warns, demands an incredibly high ethical standard, because the potential to take advantage of people is just enormous.
And all of this leaves us with this one final, lingering question. This study is from 1994, but it feels more relevant today than ever. In our world that's so full of wellness trends and experience economies, it really forces us to ask ourselves, in our own search to fill our own emptiness, to consume experiences that make us feel whole, what or who are we consuming along the way?